What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I wanted to speak about Fidelity's zero minimum investment mutual funds, and more importantly, no expense ratios that I personally use in my brokerage account that I think that you should consider or at least look into. So let's dive into it. Let's take a quick look. Full disclosure, I have in my brokerage account this FNILX S&P 500 zero expense ratio in my taxable account. And then I also carry FZROX as well. But if you stick around to the end of the video, I'll show you a third index fund that I use that has low expense ratios and high growth potential. All right, so before we start comparing ITOT and FXROX, I just want to show you why I love Fidelity so much. Is like you can compare Fidelity and Vanguard, and look, you need a zero minimum investment that Fidelity offers for all of these ones on the left that you can cycle through and you can invest in long term if you want. Where Vanguard, you need to have at least $3,000 to start investing, as well as look at these expense ratios. Your expense ratios are so much less. And the ones that I listed above previously have no expense ratio. What an expense ratio means is how much is Fidelity taking from you each year? How much are they charging you to be able to invest in these funds? So there's just a lot more opportunity and there's lower expense ratios if you didn't want to invest in the top ones I was mentioning, the total or the zero large cap index funds. Fidelity definitely offers these to get the customer in the door and then hoping that you will start buying other index funds that have higher expense ratios, which this is like nothing, but that will start making them money. But long term, they're not making any money if you are buying like funds like this. But let's get into it. Let's break down FZROX and let's compare it to ITOT. So this is Fidelity Zero Total Market Index Fund. Ticker symbol FZROX. Currently costs $14.39 per share. And this has low expense ratios, of course, because there's no fees, and the returns are high, as they say. You have to keep in mind that this has only been out for 3 years. So if you go on a 5-year mark, you can see, so 4 years. 2019 it was introduced, early 2018, and it's gone from 10,000 up to 15,000 so far. But the things I like about this is, and I like it in my taxable account, is I'm not getting charged any fees. Minimum to invest, $0. So you can start with $1 and start dollar cost averaging into this long term. There are no expense ratios, as you can see here, highlighted in blue, which is really beautiful. But there are big differences when you compare this to ITOT, which I'm going to get into later, and I'll bring them up side to side so you can see. It's really important to look at, if you're trying to gather the whole stock market and invest in just generalized market and get as much diversification as you can, you really want to pay attention to what am I actually investing in? What are my holdings? The top 10 holdings, which we'll compare to ITOT, which has been around much longer and has a proven track record. And you can see that there are only 2,780 holdings in this FZROX. And now I want to show you ITOT just to compare that real quick, and we'll compare the percentages for Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Nvidia, Apple, Google, just so you can see that there is differences between a 0% interest expense ratio versus ITOT that charges like 0.03%. Okay, so this on the right side is ITOT, which is a total market ETF. And if you decide to invest in this, I just want to quickly show you that you get much more diversification. I'm looking at the composition of ITOT, and you get 3,300 holdings. Versus on the left side, if you see my arrow, if you were to invest in the FZROX, the 0% expense ratio, you would have 2,700 holdings. So you're just for ITOT, you're getting 600 more holdings for diversification, which I think is important just to keep in mind that you're not completely mirroring the total market index fund. So as much as FZROX says it's a total market index fund, it's not covering 600 to 700 companies that ITOT does. And especially if you look at the holdings, they're very similar, but there's minute differences. You can see here I have FZROX on the left side with the Apple showing 6.12%, and then the ITOT here at 6.06%. And you can see, are there any differences? They both hold Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Nvidia, Google, Tesla, Berkshire, Meta, but their percentages are slightly different. So I think it's just important just to recognize that your overall weight exposure just for, let's say, ITOT would be 23% in the top 10 of these companies. So 23% of this portfolio relies on these companies, and which is very similar to 23.42. So nothing really crazy, just a 0.22% difference. So now, just focusing on FZROX, the Fidelity Zero Total Market Index Fund, what you have to be wary of is that you can only buy this fund in Fidelity. If you purchase this in Fidelity, you cannot transfer this money, this account, into Vanguard. You would have to sell the security, meaning that if you owned $1,000 of total market index fund of FZROX and then you opened a Vanguard account, you wouldn't be able to roll this account over to Vanguard. You'd have to sell it first. This is a Fidelity specific fund. Versus if you had ITOT, you would be able to do that. You could transfer the name over. But I just want to reiterate, we have zero expenses. Look, $0 per 1,000. That every $1,000 you invest in, there's nothing that you get charged. You get dividends just like ITOT. You get 0.21, 0.18. This is the track record that they've been doing. And this is another key feature. Fidelity's zero funds, you only get a dividend once a year. Look at the dates: December 13, 2019, December 4th, 2020, December 3rd, 2021, December 16th. So every year in December, you will get a dividend for the zero total market index fund, FZROX. Compared to ITOT, let me show you how often they will provide you dividends. So as you can see here, ITOT, the Trust S&P 1500, where it holds over those 3,300 holdings. You have your expense ratio of 0.03, which is $30 for every $10,000 you have invested, which is really a tiny expense ratio. So it's definitely a great fund to consider. Your dividend yield is 1.58%, and you will get paid out quarterly. As you can see here, every 3 months you will receive a dividend. So starting in 2021 all the way to 2023, you can see every quarter they were getting 23 cents, 36 cents, and it shows right here. If you just zoom over it, it'll show the ex-dividend date that you needed to own it by, and it shows that dividend income 40 cents per share that you owned. So if you like seeing that you are receiving dividends every 3 months and that makes you feel as if you're buying at dips and you're buying at different opportunities during the calendar year, ITOT might be more specific for you, because if you do the FZROX, you are only going to get a dividend at whatever the price is in December, and that's when they pay it. You'll still get the comparative rate compared to ITOT's 1.58% a year that you'll receive just for owning them, but you'll only get it once a month. So it's definitely something to consider. So I wanted to take the time because I think this is very valuable to see. And for some people, holding index funds they feel more comfortable if you have a track record. When you compare FZROX to ITOT, as I scroll down, you can see the chart where this top line is ITOT and it's been around much longer. So take a look at this. You can see that ITOT has been around since 2014, 2013. And if you invested $10,000, look, at the 10K mark, it's already at 30K. So it's kind of hard to compare these both, but you can see they are both moving together. And you have to remember the NAV price, right? FZROX started at $10 a share versus this one has had over 10 years of investments. So it probably would have been very similar, but you can see that they're moving pretty similar throughout time, which is good to see because you want to know, is that difference of 600 holdings really making a difference? And it seems like they're really kind of trading similar. And really quickly, I just wanted to show you, we have these top bars up here, which you can really compare the ITOT and the FZROX. You can see that the overview, there's only that 3-year time period for FZROX, which is 18.59%, versus the same 3-year period is 18.33%. So actually FZROX did get a little bit better return. But over the life of the fund, you can see over these 3 to 4 year period, it's up 9.49% compared to ITOT's 8.88%. But you can get a good idea of where it's at, and basically they're very similar. You look at the risks on it, it's all the same. They're on the same bar here. You look at the management and fees, the only difference is ITOT has 0.03% compared to FZROX, which is 0.0%. And then the ratings are very similar. They're both at 3 stars. And then what I wanted to show you was just the daily pricing and yields. You'll see that there is the NAV price of what you would pay. So it's $14 a share. And you remember no minimum investment for the FZROX compared to ITOT, still no minimum investment, but it costs $90 a share. So you can't get as many shares. And as you can see, it'll just show the dividend from the most previous, which is 12/16/2022, compared to ITOT, which is every quarter they give. If they're giving that 1.6% a year, you're getting divided by a fourth. So you're getting that every 3 months, you will get that dividend with ITOT. So in my humble opinion, I believe that FZROX is just a better option. You can buy a ton more shares at $14.39. You don't have any expense ratios. And if you're going to be in Fidelity long term, then you don't have to worry about having to transfer this over accounts. You can just hold this over the long term, keep Fidelity as your long term investments, and then you're getting good coverage. The only difference is you are only getting that 2,600 shares, which is something that you need to think about. Not shares, 2,700 holdings compared to ITOT's 3,300. So less diversification in that aspect. But when you compare the charts, they look very similar, and you can see that the sectors are very similar. All right, guys, so I hope that helps you with ITOT and FZROX. Just some considerations. I hold them both in my portfolio, just in different areas. But my favorite fund is FSPGX, and this is a growth index fund. It does have an expense ratio of 0.035, so it's not much money that you're paying with every $1,000 invested. It costs $23 for every share. But what's more important about this is that your top 10 holdings are 45% of your portfolio. So you could just buy Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Nvidia, Google, Tesla, United Health, Visa, MasterCard. But personally, for me, I don't want to have the stress of worrying about if one goes out of business, it completely fails. So they can replace these if they need to. I like this growth fund because it has 514 holdings, but its main purpose is to 45% of this total portfolio invest in the big dogs and the Apple, the Microsofts, and all these guys. I like that focused area because these are your growth companies that are going to move the most. And I'm going to put a tag at the end where you can just click on the video and it'll pop up. I have a video on this fund that I explain FSPGX. And definitely feel free to leave a comment in the section below if you have a question or other index funds that you want me to review or something that you think is definitely valuable to invest in. And that's all I got for you. If you feel like you learned something, please subscribe and like.